Welcome to the Creating Your Conditions podcast, a work of understanding conditions we are given, the conditions we create, and the conditions we have yet to achieve. You can find us at Creating Your Conditions on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify. My name is Vincenzo, or Vin, and I use they, them, theirs pronouns, and I am your host. In today's episode, I am interviewing Davida Tarpley. Currently, Davida is a college life coach, instructing first-year seminar courses and serving as the primary contact for her students to foster their success. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Global E-Learning and a Master of Education in Student Affairs Counseling, both from Texas A&M University of Commerce. Additionally, she has graduated from South College, concentrating on a Doctor of Education in Higher Education Leadership. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hey, Davida, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Vin.
Yeah, sorry we had to reschedule a couple times, but I'm glad we're here.
Yeah, me too.
How's your day been today?
Extra busy. So coming back from the holiday because we were off Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So
Okay.
yeah, I came back to multiple emails and students doing presentations. It's been a day.
I feel that. And especially in like higher ed where you're at, I don't think it really ends. I don't know if there's a slow period for you.
No, there's no such thing. Even in the summer, we're busy. There's no students there. But we're
Yeah.
revising lesson plans and doing curriculum reviews. So yeah, it's always busy.
Dang. Okay. Got you. Well, I applaud that, and it makes me more sure that education route is not for me. But I also always appreciate the people who are willing to put in that work to make sure students in this country are educated and ready.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's we can get started on the interview. We'll dial it back some. Why don't we start off with like where you grew up and where you're from?
Okay. So I was born in Dallas and then I grew up in Arlington, which is like a suburb of Dallas. I was in Arlington from the time I was like 2 until I was 11. And so when I was 11, my dad retired and he decided that he wanted a farm. So we moved to this very small town with a population at that time of 1,400 called Wolf.
Wow. What was
So
it called?
Wolf City, Texas. So definitely a culture shock. I went from like classrooms with about 40 students per classroom to 10 students per classroom. Unfortunately, it was also the time that I first experienced racism. I had never experienced racism before until I got to Wolf City. It started with one of the students calling me a porch monkey. And so I went home to my parents and I was like, what is that? Like, why is he calling me that? So they really had to just sit down and have a talk with me about racism. And so yeah. Also, it was kind of like a low period in my life because I missed like being close to my cousins and my aunts and uncles. So it was quite an adjustment for me.
And you were 11 when this happened? Well, like when you moved and then okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so was Arlington much more black, and then Wolf City, was that an area more white or?
So no, Arlington, I think I may have had like one other black student in my class. I think in the whole school, maybe 5 black students at that time. But I just never experienced racism, never had like any students, and maybe because it was like more in the city. And maybe because people were like more acclimated to different cultures and different races and ethnicities. I'm not sure. City, it's very southern, very small, very rural. So it's just like a whole different type of environment. And you've got a lot of people that have lower socioeconomic status there, and that
Mm.
usually makes a difference with racism as well. From what I've experienced, people with a higher socioeconomic status tend to be less racist than people with a lower socioeconomic status that look different from me.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never thought that. But I feel like I am also just assuming that most I'm generalizing a little bit, and like the white people that I have experienced having like more of those biases, but I think it does just depend on where they're from and like what that environment is like and what that environment perpetuates, right?
Right,
Um, yeah,
exactly.
especially if you went from a school of like a classroom of 40 to 10, you know, you are going to get much more intimate much more quickly with your classmates because the class size and the population is so much smaller.
Definitely.
Um,
hmm And another thing with that town is well, now they pull the railroad tracks up, but at that time it was segregated by railroad tracks. And
oh,
we did move to the black, quote unquote, black area. So that was another issue. So not only did I have like issues with racism, but I also had issues with other black students because I guess I wasn't like from where they live. I didn't live in that area. My life looked a lot different from their lives. Most of them did not have like their fathers in the home. And I had
mm,
my father. So it was very, very difficult because I couldn't find any place to really fit in. My friends were white because we had more in common, and but because of that,
would you say socioeconomically because where your dad happened to be able to afford that farm?
yes, definitely.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so we had similar backgrounds socioeconomically. But due to that, the black students would say that I wanted to be white and that, that I didn't fit in with them. So it was very hard, like trying to fit in and like find, you know, my group, so to speak.
Yeah, I bet. Like you didn't ask for those conditions in your life. Were an 11-year-old moving halfway through your childhood.
Right.
Um, I wanted to ask if you're comfortable sharing like what that conversation with your parents was when that student called you that name.
So my parents basically like explained ignorance to me, and how, some people, their parents, may tell them things and maybe they're getting bits and pieces of things from their parents and they may misconstrue certain things. But basically they instilled in me like the I guess the ability for me to like see who I really am, to know,
Mm,
that's not who I am. And some people, are just ignorant of the fact, I learned a lot about the word ignorance, is what I'll say, because I think before that conversation with my parents, I thought of ignorance as, oh, you're just stupid,
right. Okay. Yeah.
that conversation, I learned that, they're ignorant to the facts. They just don't know any better. These are just the perspectives that they have because they don't fully understand. So it really
Mm,
helps to kind of hone in on that word ignorance and know that ignorance is not always a negative connotation. Sometimes it's just simply being unlearned about a certain subject or a certain matter.
yeah. Totally agree. And it I used to do that. I used to think that as well, and I probably figured that out in my teens, in my youth. But like, it just means not knowing, and
Mhm.
stupid is choosing something despite knowing the full thing.
Exactly.
Um, and I not to derail us too much, but there's a lot of people that voted a certain way in this past election that I feel are not stupid. I feel like they're ignorant, they're uneducated voters.
Yeah.
And I think the literacy of this country speaks to that. But yeah, people are taught a certain way, and the society that it's built around is also taught to continue to live that way. They're going to continue to show up in it and to say it to other people. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. And do you have siblings, and did they also have to have this conversation with your
So
parents?
I have siblings, but they're much older than me. So they were already graduated from school by the time we moved there.
Okay. Oh,
So
so you're the youngest.
yes, I'm the youngest.
Got you.
Mhm.
I don't feel like it's common for like an 11-year-old's dad to be retired. So I'm just curious, like what was your dad's like work background, and how
Oh,
old was he when he retired? But then you
my
just said you also have like much older siblings, so there must be like a time thing that I'm missing
yeah.
here.
So when I was born, my dad was 40 and my mom
Okay.
was 30. So there's a huge um age gap between like my sisters because they were born when my dad was in his 20s. So
Mm-hmm.
and my mom, she one of my sisters is my mom's, and then my other sister is my dad's with another mom. So and then my mom had my sister, I think she was like 19. So yeah, so there's this big age gap. So with him
Yeah.
being 40 when I was born, by the time he retired, he was 60s, early 60s. So yeah.
Okay. Got you. What was it like? I don't know, growing up so distant in age from your siblings, I guess.
I think it made me selfish.
Because you were like almost an only child, basically.
Because
Yeah.
my sister graduated when I was 6. Like, so yeah, so I was so used to always like having my own space, my own this, my own that. Um, so definitely when I got married, that's when it really did show that, yeah, you were, you need to learn how to share your space.
I'm kind of laughing because my partner has said the same things about me. It's like, I can tell you're also mostly raised on your own.
Yeah. Are you an only child?
I have an older brother that's 12 years older than me. And
Okay.
so, like, there's also that age gap where he was like a third parent, you know?
Mhm.
And yeah, like, I didn't grow up with him even when we moved to the US. Like, he moved back to Italy when I was like 8, or oh no, when I was 10. So I grew up without him most of my life. And yeah, like, I never had to share anything, you know? If I
Yeah.
asked, I usually got it. And with my partner, he's like, I can tell, like, you don't want me to touch something, but it's literally a plate. So, shows up in funny ways when you have a partner.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Um, for growing up in Texas, like most of your or all of your life, right?
Hmm.
Um, what was the rest of like your childhood and like high school years like?
So pretty much the same with high school. Just not as much like vocalization of racism, but a lot of microaggressions throughout high school. So
And did
pretty much
you know that they were microaggressions? Like, did you have that terminology?
no, I just learned that term maybe 10 years ago.
Okay,
Yeah,
got you.
yeah. So I just knew I would explain it to my parents like they do subtle things that you really can't label as outright racism. So I knew what a microaggression was, but I didn't know it was a microaggression.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I got you. And what was your relationship with like your parents and your family like?
Oh, my relationship with my parents has always been good. My dad did pass away. I still have my mom, so yeah, we do have a good relationship, my sisters. So even though I didn't get to really see them as much as I wanted to, but we still did have a good relationship.
Okay, cool. And has your family always been in Texas, I guess?
My mom lived in Hawaii, like before she was married to my dad.
Oh,
Um, she's lived in San Diego.
oh,
Or else? Those are all. Oh, Tennessee. We also lived
okay,
in Tennessee when I was a baby.
okay,
So yeah, but for the most part, Texas. Yeah, my mom was born in Texas, so.
okay, got you, got you. Um, and then let's see. I can imagine it was probably like really like just like very separate, like with your siblings, since the age gap was so big. But did they like help you, or did your parents help you when you were going through like college applications and that kind of stuff, like that part of your high school experience?
No, I'm first generation, so my parents didn't help me. I had to ask different people and kind of figured some things out on my own. But I also like met people that, would help me like fill out FAFSA and, make appointments with my advisor and, learn how to get in contact with admissions and student accounts. And yeah, so I had a lot of support from just people, some people that I knew, some random people.
Yeah, got you. And was it kind of assumed in your family that you would go to college, or was that like your choice?
It was my choice.
Hmm.
My parents were just like, whatever you want to do. If you want to work, you can work. If you want to go to college, you can go to college. So it wasn't like I know with a lot of people, it's like that's the next step. Like that is the only thing you can do. So it definitely wasn't like that in my family.
Okay, got you. Did your siblings also go to college?
My sister went to like a technical school. It was called VTI like back then. So she went there. And my other sister did it's like medical technologist program. So I guess it's like a vocational program as well.
Okay, got you. But I guess they were so like far removed from when you were in high school, it probably just felt like, I don't know why, if I should be asking you how to do this.
No, I mean, they didn't go to like a college or university.
Yeah,
So I
there's
didn't
a
ask.
different application
Yeah,
process.
yeah,
Okay,
much different.
okay.
Mhm.
What kind of student were you in high school?
So when I started high school, I was a pretty good student. But my senior year, I just got really, really burned out. So I was like literally like a C student. My
Okay.
senior, but up until that point, I was like a straight A student. So I still had a decent GPA when I graduated.
Why do you think you burned out?
I think I was tired of like being there. I was ready to be able to leave and, go back to the city and be close to my cousins and my aunts and uncles. I think I was just really, really tired of being there. And you know
Oh,
how
okay.
like if you're running a race, like when you get to the end, you're just really tired and burned out. It was the same thing. It was like I was fighting for, this freedom and fighting for what I felt like was normalcy and fighting to get away from the racism. Like so I think I was just really drained like by my senior year.
Got you. So you stayed in that farm town? Is it a farm town? I don't know. Okay. Like that rural area, if that's less judgmental of me. Um but you would go back to Arlington with your like to see your cousins and stuff, and you could tell that is more of the environment you wanted to be
Oh,
around. Okay.
definitely. Mhm.
Got it. Got it.
And then my
Interesting.
cousins were like close to my age. So my sisters were older, but my cousins were close to my age. So I liked being with my cousins.
Okay. So you grew up with cousins around you from, I mean, I know you not quite like next to you, but uh like your parents had siblings and they all got together for family gatherings and stuff.
So holidays, some weekends, yeah, I was able to spend time with my cousins.
Okay. That's cool. I didn't grow up with a lot of family around me, so I always like to know what that's like for folks. To be able to sleep over with your cousins and go to the mall with your cousins, you know?
Lots of fun.
Are you still close with your cousins now?
Yes, one of my
That's
cousins
cool.
that I grew up with, well, kind of grew up with, always spent time with, he would come to our house like in the summers and stay, or I would go there. He moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and he was here for the holiday. And so he actually stayed the night, Thanksgiving night. So yeah, we're still
Cool.
very close.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Are there any like traditions that your family did that you have kind of taken on in your household?
Always celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve and not on Christmas
Okay.
Day.
Yeah.
My grandma started that because she said she wanted everyone to be able to be with their spouses' families on Christmas Day. So we've always celebrated Christmas Eve, and we've carried that tradition on.
Forward thinking. Wow. That's like you get a family day and you get your current like, you know, like blood family day and chosen family, you know, like partner family day.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. What do you think? Actually, let me ask you one more question about like your childhood. And I don't know if this is you started off with that story about you being an 11-year-old and like moving from, you know, a city where you felt more comfortable to a rural town where it was clearly not comfortable right off the bat.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you like what do you think the most influential condition of your childhood was?
It's a good question. What was the most influential? I'm gonna have to think about that one. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, I got you. What do you think is the strongest characteristic you remember having as a child?
Probably being bratty.
Like in only child syndrome, but not really.
My nickname, my dad called me Brat. My nickname.
Nice.
Yeah, so probably definitely be.
You laughed at that, so I feel like it's like a proud badge you own, you know, but also like, yep, that was me.
Yeah.
Cool. Let me do it. So where did you, if you want to answer, like where you went to college and like what did you choose to study?
So I went to Texas A&M University Commerce. So I studied for my undergrad. I got a bachelor's of global e-learning, and then I got my master's in education with a focus in higher ed.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's very specific. So how did you come to that major and specificity?
Okay, so undergrad, I was just like, I just want to get a degree. I don't know
Okay.
what I wanted in. I'll just pick something that looks easy. So that's how I got that degree. But while I was an undergrad, I got a student worker position for TRIO Student Support Services. It's an academic support service for first generation and lower socioeconomic status students. And I really found my home. I really found my niche there. I was like, I love this. I love working with students. I love explaining things to students that, you know, have no idea, just like I was a student with no idea how to do things, no idea how to do college. um,
That's
so
so fair. I don't know how
really
to do college.
really enjoyed that, and I ended up getting a GA position there when I was working on my master's, and I just knew like this is for me. So that's why I did the Master's of Education in higher student affairs, higher education.
Okay. Got you. Okay. So why do you think, or what was the experience like for you moving from like your high school into college and, you know, Texas A&M and like the culture at Texas A&M?
It's right down the street. So there was no culture change. Yeah, it's literally like 20 minutes away.
Okay, got you. Would you say that, like, okay, so there was not a change, right?
Oh. Now there was a change. Let me say this. Even though it was 20 minutes away, there were so many diverse cultures and ethnicities, and yeah, so totally different. Never experienced the racism there, because there were so many different cultures there. And I got a chance to like meet people from other countries and like learn about their cultures. And so yeah, it was great.
Okay. Was that new for you, like meeting people from other countries, I guess?
Yes. The only people that I had met from like another country were Ethiopians, and that's because an Ethiopian family moved next door to my cousins in Dallas, and so when I would go there, I would play with those children as well. And they swore that I was Ethiopian. I'm like, no, I'm not. And I get that everywhere I go. Like if I go into 7-Eleven, I saw you
Oh,
in my.
really?
I'm like, no, you didn't see me in your country. When I open my mouth and I talk, they're like, oh no, you're from Texas.
You're a Texan. Interesting. Okay. Um, and I guess what was that exposure like for you, especially as you started working with students, right?
It was amazing. It like really like transcended my thoughts, like really my whole life. And I just felt it felt like home. Like I felt like this is like really where I'm supposed to be. Like this is really my purpose. I mean, this is really like what fulfills me. Because I think about what would I do for free, and I
Mm.
think students for free. I love it. I get a lot of fulfillment from being able to see the impact that I can make, the positive impact that I can make on someone's life. And when they graduate and they walk across that stage, I try to make sure I go to all of their graduations. It's
Aw.
the best feeling ever because to know that, I had some small part in their life. So I love it.
I feel like not a lot of people in higher ed speak this highly of their position and like the impact they have on their students. So it just makes me happy to see you happy in your job.
Thank you.
Do you what was I gonna ask? What do you think of like? Oh, I lost that question. Sorry.
It's okay.
What were your parents supportive of like what you I know they were supportive if you went to college or if you wanted to just work right out of high school, but what did they think of like this career choice?
They were extremely proud. Yeah, they still are. Well, my dad passed away, but my mom is still extremely proud. My mom talks a lot about, all these students, they look up to you, you're there for them. Yeah, so extremely proud. And my dad, before he passed, was very, very proud of the decision that I made for my career. They're proud that I went to college. Definitely proud that like I even like got my master's. So yeah, extremely proud.
Cool. It sounds like they were vocal, like you said you had a good relationship with them, and so
Mhm.
I'm guessing that you talked about your feelings with them and you could always go to them when you were growing up, or how was it like?
Definitely. I felt comfortable talking to my parents about anything, like, anything. Like we could
Yeah.
talk about. There was nothing that I ever felt like I had to hide or felt like I would be judged or, felt like I would be punished or like anything like that. I've always been very comfortable talking to my parents.
Hmm. How do you think how do you think they fostered that kind of environment in your home growing up?
I don't think they got it from their parents. So my mom I don't think that she could just like talk to my grandma about anything. Just from like listening to stories about, her growing up, I can't really see that being the case. And then with my dad, his parents died when he was 11. But his aunt, my grandmother's sister, raised him after that. And I don't think that it was the best of relationships. I think she kind of took him out of obligation instead of like just because she wanted him, she felt obligated to take care of my dad and my uncle. Um, so maybe it's because they didn't have that and they wanted it. So maybe that's why they made things so comfortable and so open, and for me to be able to talk to them. Because I know lots of times when we have experiences like growing up that were negative, when you have children, you do it the opposite because you don't want your children to have that negative experience.
Yeah. I mean, it also just takes a lot of unlearning to do that and parent you the way that they did.
Yes.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's cool. So you kind of found like your calling pretty quickly, I feel like, in college, and then you went on to do like a master's degree to further into like that career. Were there any other paths that you considered before choosing that master's program?
No. No.
Damn. Okay. All right then. It's cool. Was there a particular like student or a season when you were still a student but working under that program that kind of made you feel like, oh, this is really it?
Yes. So they were trying to get like more participation in the program. So they were like, hey, let's try to create some learning communities. And I was like, okay, so like, how are we going to do that? And they're like, you're going to do it. So started from scratch. I created a STEM learning community. So
But you're a student, right? You're an undergrad that's like work
yeah.
for the. Okay, all right. Just clarify. Got it.
Yeah, so I created this STEM learning community, and there were a lot of girls like in there, which I thought was really neat because like a lot of girls don't go into STEM fields and they don't have like the support that they need. So I was like, okay, I'm doing this from scratch, so let me figure it out. So I just started bringing in speakers. Um, I use speakers from the Texas Department of Transportation. One of my cousins is a physician's assistant, and he did like a PowerPoint presentation. Um, who else did I have? I had Toyota people from like the Toyota company come, and they actually like showed students how to interview, like how to dress, like how to answer interview questions, and they did mock
Mm,
interviews. So that's how I started with. I was like, okay, we'll start with speakers. So I brought speakers in. Then I thought about like what the students really wanted, and it sounded like they wanted it to be more like an organization, kind of like the student orgs. And so one day I was like, okay, well, let's create a logo. So we sat down, we all created a logo, and then
branding makes it serious. It makes it legit. You're like slapping a logo on. We're official now.
so I
Okay.
idea like to my supervisor, and I was like, so do you think that we could get like t-shirts or a jacket? And she agreed.
Merch.
So we got t-shirts, we got a jacket, and that kind of lit up everything. Then we did fundraisers and we went on a trip. It wasn't like a big trip. We went to Six Flags. But
Nice.
did was we got a behind the scenes tour to see like how all of the different coasters and rides work. So we were able to like get that engineering like type of experience, and then after that, of course, we rode rides and ate.
Right on.
So yeah.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like being able to cultivate an experience for these students that was both fun and educational, like gave them real skills, but also like opportunities to connect with people in other industries.
Yes,
Um, was like, yeah, this is right. This feels
yeah,
good for me. That's
definitely.
cool.
I kept doing it while I was working as a graduate assistant. Kept doing the same thing. It got bigger and better. I mean, it was awesome. It was a really awesome experience. We ended up going to a better trip. We went to SeaWorld and we did the
Ooh.
planes tour to see like how they prep for the shows for like Shamu and when they used to do that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for the shows and like what they feed the animals, and because I had some that were like animal science majors. So also I have three students that actually got internships. One got an internship with Toyota and two of them got an internship with TxDOT, and one of them still works for TxDOT.
Dang,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Saying TxDOT like you're from Texas as if you know what that is. So TxDOT is the Texas Department of Transportation.
Okay, okay, okay. I kind of thought it was an oil company, but I was wrong. Thanks for explaining. Um, that's awesome, and also it's so I for first generation like college students especially, you don't know what you don't know. Like you don't know that you're supposed to do internships in college so that you can land a full-time job. So I didn't know that. Right? Like
Right.
so I was flubbering around for like 2 or 3 years after graduating for like, oh, I got this degree, that's enough, right? And it's like, well, we need experience. And I'm like, how was I supposed to have experience when I was like in college? Like what? But then like it's programs like this that are like, hey, here's some people that are at these companies. They might have a summer internship, and boom, there is like literally a pathway. Like
Yeah.
intern one summer, and then they might promise you a job for when you graduate. So before your senior year even starts, you're like set because you chose to give your summer to like a company. And
Hmm.
that's really cool that you like gave these are still continuing to give students like that, like an opportunity like that. That's
Yes.
cool.
Mm.
So what was well, I could continue to ask you about your career and I will, but I also wanted to ask like what was like your support system like in undergrad. So it sounds like, you found a space that you could work at that also like fulfilled your cup in terms of your career. But like
Hmm.
did you join any other extracurriculars? Or what other friends did you make in college, I guess?
So where I work, Trio Student Support Services, I actually joined the program because I qualified because I was first generation, and they provided so much support. Like that, they were really my support system. To this day, like even though I don't work in Trio anymore, like I'm still friends with them. I had
That's
a
cool.
birthday party for my grandson when he turned 6 months. They actually came to that party, so we're still really close and they're still pouring into me.
That's awesome. So was that your main extracurricular in undergrad then?
Yes,
Okay.
because there's so many things to do with that program. There are trips. And so the trips are for cultural enrichment. And so basically, students go on trips, they get to stay in the hotels for free, they eat for free, transportation is free. Um, and basically, they had to put students in higher end hotels and eat at higher end restaurants to give them a cultural experience that they may not have gotten otherwise. So yeah, we were always going on trips. There were workshops all the time. They would do workshops and bring in other departments on the campus to kind of break the silos and to kind of like let students know like how to get into grad school, um, how to do their FAFSA, like different things with financial aid. So they would invite those different academic departments, and then students had like firsthand knowledge on how to do things. So there were always workshops. There was just always something to do. So I was heavily involved. And one thing that they always say is once you're in the trio family, you're always in the trio family. And that has definitely been proven.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Found your home and you also found like piece of your future, just by
Yes.
like asking for help pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, right?
Exactly.
And then you mentioned you were a graduate assistant. So like when you were doing master's program still at the same school?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you like meet with people in the department before like deciding that major or that graduate degree?
No, I knew that's what I wanted
You're
to
like,
do.
nope, that's it. I already did all the reading. I'm prepared now.
Yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's cool. Is there anything you wish you knew in that time period, in your college or grad school years?
In my college years, I wish that I would have known that it's really good to do different like student organizations and be really engaged as a student. Because although I was connected with Trio, I wasn't connected with other student engagement activities. I wish that I would have joined a sorority. I just wish that I would have like just been more active. I wish I knew
Yeah.
that being active really paid off.
Do you think that in a social sense, like like social capital, having more friends for fun instead of just within a structure that obviously is very helpful, but it's kind of academically focused, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
got you.
And I would have had like a better balance if I would have
Okay.
had a bit more fun.
Do you think you burned out at all in undergrad?
Probably the last semester. Yeah.
Okay.
The last
Okay.
push.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Did
So
I push?
there's a bit of a trend of you being very
Yeah.
academically driven, and then like that last year or that last half lap, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What about in grad school? What was that experience like for you?
In grad school, it was like I got a second wind. So I never did get burned out, but my program was only 36 hours. So that's probably, it just wasn't enough time to get burned out. So yeah, get burned out with my master's.
Okay, cool. And I guess in that time, like, what did you do outside of academics and school?
Well, I was older when I got my master's, so I was married. So I just, took care of my family
Okay.
outside. Mm-hmm.
When did you meet your partner?
2009. Yeah, 2009.
Okay. Is that after college or in college?
It was after. Well,
Okay.
after grad, but before graduate school.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And feel free to, if I've asked something that might be too personal, just say so. But I'm always
Okay.
curious, about like people's like partnerships, and a little bit selfishly, because I also just want to make the right choices in my life.
Yeah.
But how did you two meet, and like, I don't know, how did the relationship develop to like where you knew this was like gonna be your person?
So we met in Dallas. At first I didn't think he was gonna be my person. To be honest, I thought he was a stalker.
Whoops.
So I was showing like some people some pictures that we had taken, and he asked me, "Do you have like more pictures in your phone?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I just kind of like handed him my phone, and I kept talking to the people I was talking to. And later on, I saw this number. I was like, "What number is this in my phone?" I was like, "I didn't call this number." So
He
of course
called himself.
yeah. So of course I called it, and I was like, "Who is this?" And he's like, "This is Larry." I'm like, "Larry who?" Like, yeah. So really, I thought he was a stalker. I was kind of scared. but eventually, he grew on me. he he was very romantic, wrote letters, and I thought that that was just something that was kind of like a timeless treasure, so to speak.
Yeah, in an age where you could text and stuff, he chose to write you letters too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like he mailed them to you, or he like handed them to you?
No, he sent them to me. Yeah, he would hand letters. Yeah, so I really, really felt, like maybe maybe he's it. Like he's romantic, he's nice, like maybe he's not a stalker.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe.
And then my dad started getting sick. My dad died from a disease called Pick's disease. It's a form of dementia, but it's not in the same lobe of the brain as like the most common form of dementia. Um, his was due to an accident. So my dad was a truck driver. And towards the end, right before he retired, he was in an accident. They have like beds on the truck and like two guys would drive. And so his partner was driving and he didn't let my dad know that he was tired. My dad was like, if I knew, I would have driven. But he was driving. They were in Salt Lake City, Utah, and they fell 50 feet off the mountain because the driver fell asleep behind them.
Whoa.
And so my dad had a lot of like head injuries from that, from being just kind of tossed about in the truck because he didn't have a seatbelt on because he was in the
He was
sleeper.
sleeping. Yeah.
And then some glass like got in his head as well. So I think the injuries brought on the Pick's disease for my dad. But I said all that to say that around that time, that's when I met my husband, and he was very, very. I was in a place where it was very hard for me to talk about my dad's illness and like the progression of his illness. It was kind of like I just wanted to pretend that it wasn't happening. Like, but I would see the changes, like every time I'd go to my parents' house. It started with like his equilibrium being off. And then he started falling. Then he would like my mom would put his plate down and like his brain wouldn't give like his hand the signal to pick up his fork and eat. So I was watching, this progression of the disease. But I wouldn't talk to anyone about it. I was around people all the time and I would not talk to them about it. But with Larry, I felt so comfortable. And I know I had to just be talking his ear off, like about my dad. And he was so patient and he always listened. He didn't give feedback. He just listened. He just let me talk. So that's what kind of like let me know there's something special about this guy. Like he's really supportive of what I'm going through, and dealing with my dad's illness. And then he would say, do you want me to drive you down so that you can see your dad? And so he would drive me down. And, my dad was nonverbal. He had aphasia. So he would talk to him, and like my dad would like nod his head and so he had asked, and this was like very soon after we met, he asked my dad, he said, can I marry your daughter? I promise I'll take care of her. He was like, if you agree, just squeeze my hand. And he said, like Larry said, it seemed like my dad had superhuman strength for a minute and he just squeezed his hand so hard. So that kind of let me know that I was safe. It let me know that I was safe with Larry, because I know that my dad would never put me into the hands of someone that wasn't safe, like someone that wouldn't take care of me. So I knew then. I was like, yep, he's the one. And if my daddy's good with it, then I know it's okay. Yeah, but just being so supportive and just being there, just being that listening ear. That's what let me know. Yep, he's the one.
Oh, damn. That's oh man. It's just like your dad, was there. He just couldn't there's limited ways he could show he was there, but he answered the question, and he felt like he screened Larry for you, Yeah, that's
Exactly.
cool. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's so sweet.
Yeah, my dad died like 3 months after we met. And I mean, for the funeral, he was there. When the family went to like do the family's private viewing, he was there. Like for every step of the way, he was there. He was actually a pallbearer for my dad as well. So
Mm,
I was like, and that's very symbolic to me. Like you carried my dad, so I know that you,
yeah.
yeah.
And
So
other members of the family also had to approve of that, because you don't just let somebody like do that when someone in your family like dies and has to be put in the ground.
exactly.
Mm.
Hmm.
Was your dad's like health decline pretty fast in those last few years? I'm guessing since
Yeah, it was for 3 years, but
okay.
um, like at the end, it seemed like everything was just going so fast. It was like it really felt like each week there was like something else,
Mhm.
um, that he lost. Um, and by the end, his body had kind of went back to like a fetal position, and like it was like
Mm.
watched him progress from like this big, strong, man, to very childlike.
Mm.
Mm.
That second like childhood, I guess, that folks who like become more elderly, and in his case, I mean, he was already older, right? Since he was retired when you were like 11.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
also just in the way that his mind, probably like if he hadn't been in that accident, it wouldn't have gone this way, right? Like physically.
right. Hmm.
Um, well, I'm curious, like how like you and your siblings and also like your mom like dealt with his loss.
My mom, it was very, very hard for my mom. His sickness was hard for my mom. Um, Having like her strong husband that was her protector, and to have to, switch roles to where she's like
Yes, yeah.
him, that was hard for my mom. My mom is also the type of person who wants to be strong. And so I feel like her like being strong kind of broke her down in a way. I guess that's the only way I can kind of describe it. Like she was trying so hard to be strong, but she really needed to be vulnerable. Um, but she's just not built that way. She doesn't want to be vulnerable and have like other people to have to take care of her. Like she wants to be the strong one.
Mm.
Um, I would say it was, even though like maybe on the inside of me, I feel like it was harder for me than anyone else. I know that it was harder for my mom than anyone else, because this is her soulmate. This is her person, her other half.
Mm.
And to have to, see her other half go through all of that, I know it really, really hurt her in a way even worse than it hurt me. Even though like I'm daddy's little girl, so I felt like,
Yeah,
oh,
of course.
and the worst of this, like no, my mom definitely got the worst, of the
Mhm.
situation. But my mom was, remained strong as she could. Um, and she kept the faith, that my dad, would be in heaven. She, always asked him, do you still believe in Jesus? And when he could talk, it was yes. When he could no longer talk, it was the head nod.
Mm.
um, and so she felt comforted in knowing that, okay, he believes in Jesus. He's going to go to heaven. He's not going to be in pain anymore. It was hard for my mom to see my dad in pain. I was so
Yeah.
disillusioned. I kept thinking, no, he's going to be healed. He's going to get well. He's going to get up and walk. Like, and that's what I kept telling myself. And that's what I truly believed, you know. So it may have looked like I was selfish, like, no, you just want him to stay here, but, you know, he's suffering. But no, I really, really felt like he was going to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have my mom, you know, basically saying, just let him go, let him rest. He's tired of fighting. But I'm like, no, you're giving up on him. He's going to get better. We're going to find a cure, you know. So, my sisters weren't very present. I mean, they would come every once in a while, but they weren't really present. And I don't know if it's because they couldn't deal with it or they just didn't want to, or
Mhm.
perhaps they just couldn't tolerate like seeing my dad that way.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you think do you think that's changed like in the time that he's been gone? Like how your mom feels, like, you know, if she's more willing to be vulnerable now and doesn't have to be strong all the time, and if you and your siblings have gotten the chance to talk about it more since.
So I really haven't talked to my siblings more about it. I was upset with my siblings because I felt like they should have been there. Uh,
Mm.
I think our relationship changed. I don't think it'll ever be the same again like it was because of the lack of um, even visibility. Like, you know, when
Yeah.
my dad was going through his illness, my mom is definitely able to be more vulnerable now. And my mom depends on me a lot, and I like it. Like, I like that she depends on me. Like, I like that I can be for her what she's always been for me. Um,
Mm.
she's always been like, her and my dad, you know, they're always my rock, you know, they're always there. And so now that my mom is older and she's got some health problems, I'm so glad, you know, that we all moved into the same house. Like, my mom sold her house and her land, and we're all in the same house. And now I don't have to worry about my mom. But I think she's very comfortable being vulnerable with me, but I think she's still not comfortable being vulnerable with other people, but she is with me.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's when you have to be like a parent to so many children too, you know, like, and at various points of their own lives, I feel like there's calculations you just always had to make to be strong.
Mhm. Definitely.
Yeah. Um Dang it, I had another question, but then I got like really present and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna listen. Um I Oh, yes. Okay. What you kind of mentioned your faith, and how, you know, in the last few moments, like your dad was still like connected to his faith. You all checked on him, and whatever cues he could give, he gave you. But what role did like your faith have in your life?
So, faith has always been a big thing for me. My parents taught me at a very young age to have a relationship with God and not to be concerned about like religion, so to speak, and like religious practices, but to actually like live your life in a way that you make a positive impact on other people and that you show love. Like, really, it's all about like showing love. And to me, like when I think about the definition of love, I think it's sacrifice. Um, because I'm a Christian, so I do believe that when Jesus died on the cross, that he made this ultimate sacrifice. Like, it wasn't easy to go through that. It's not something that he even wanted to go through, you know.
Hmm.
So I think that when I can sacrifice for other people, that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Um sometimes I have to sacrifice like maybe my own opinion or my own biases, or, I have to sacrifice things for the betterment of someone else. And I think that's what love is. Like, even when I don't feel like doing it, like if I need to go out of my way to do something, I'd rather be laying in my bed or whatever. I think that's how I show love. And so that's kind of how like my parents raised me. We're not really into like, okay, you got to do this rule and that rule. And, we're not really into that. We're just into the way that we live our lives in a way that it makes a positive impact on other people. Like, I never want to make a negative impact. I never want to be like, oh, here she comes. Like, she's bringing me down. Like, I want to be able to like lift people up and like help people and not be judgy and, make people feel uncomfortable. Like, I really don't like doing that. I wasn't raised to be that way. Um, so I think that faith, the role that it played, like in my dad's sickness, I was I was really like praying a lot to God about healing my dad. So for a while, I was kind of angry at God because I felt like, okay, God, like, I live like I'm supposed to. I do the things I'm supposed to do. So why, didn't you just. And I would think about there's all kinds of bad dads. There's dads that are crackheads, dads that don't care
Yes. Yeah.
about their kids. So like why my dad? Why couldn't
Why
he
my
stay?
dad? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it really took one of my cousins, she's a pastor, and she came like to our church and she preached. And she has like kind of like a prophetic kind of spirit. And she was like, somebody in here is like not letting go of something, but you have to let it go. Like, and I remember like my husband saying there was a sound that came from me, like a sound that he couldn't explain. He said it was just
Mm.
sound. And like I can remember just kind of like looking to my left and like seeing my dad kind of like floating through the air. And so that was when I kind of let go of all that anger and all that pain, like, because God didn't heal my dad in the way that I wanted him to. And then I was able to understand that he did heal my dad. Like, my dad is not sick anymore. My dad's not here suffering anymore. He just didn't heal him in the way that I wanted him to. But I would say for about a period of 3 years, like, I was kind of going through the motions. But I was really angry at God.
Mm-hmm. I guess you kind of answered my question if there were times in your life where your faith was challenged. Um, so I guess that time period, and I mean that makes sense. You don't want your dad to die, and especially not in that way where he like kind of left, like he deteriorated like mentally right in front of you, like right before all of you.
Yeah.
Um, you said it was about 3 years, and what do you think shifted for you? Was that the church visit with your cousin who was prophetic? Was that the 3 year mark?
Yes.
Wow, okay. Got it.
Definitely my cousin, was very instrumental in, well, I mean, she was the reason why I was able, to let go and stop being angry with God.
Hmm. Yeah. Damn. That's
I,
powerful,
yeah.
Um so you said you were kind of trying to go back to the other parts of your timeline, but you said you went back to grad school when you were older. So like after, I know this was kind of in that in between time, right? Your dad's like passing and everything. And
Yes.
when did you decide you would go back for grad school? And
Uh,
were you working in this time too?
yes. So I was working like in all different kinds of fields, like
Okay.
things that I was not interested in. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, this is going nowhere. Like, I'm not fulfilled. I'm just working just to make money. And that wasn't enough for me. So I was like, I'm going to go, to grad school. And I'm going to do what it is that I feel like is my purpose, what I was meant to do.
So why did you not go to grad school right away? Was it because you wanted to be closer to home for a little bit, or another reason?
I wanted to go back to Dallas and like be, with my family and, the bright lights. And
A
so,
city, a city.
yeah, yeah, just wanted to, and I thought that I was going to be fulfilled by like working, but I wasn't
Mm,
fulfilled.
okay. So you went back and did master's in higher ed, student
Mhm.
affairs. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was that? What was that program like? So now you're married, and grieving, your dad and everything, but still trying to focus on your career again.
Yeah. I think my dad kind of motivated me, like I was like, my dad would want me to do this. He would
Mm,
want me to be in a career that I'm fulfilled in. So, yeah, I was like really motivated.
that makes sense. Um, and after you graduated, how did you I guess land into like the roles that you've had since then?
So, I was the graduate assistant for Trio. And then the president had like this idea that he wanted to have this kind of wraparound services like for students and connect them to resources on campus. And so they tried this format with an academic concierge. And so that's the first job that I got in higher ed after doing the graduate assistant. So I did that for a year, but it didn't pan out the way that he thought it would or the way that he wanted it to work. And so they ended up dissolving the position. But right before they dissolved the position, there was a position for university partnership coordinator that came up. And so I did that for 2 years. But it wasn't what I really wanted. I was building partnerships between like the university and community colleges and then making that connection for like their career.
Mm,
So industries. Um, the most fulfilling part about that is I was project manager for a grant. And so it was very fulfilling to be able to, disperse this grant money and see all the
mm,
things like from the students and to be able to talk to some of them on the phone. And so I said, I really need to get back student facing. I was like, part
mm,
school, but I really need to get back student facing because that's my itch. That's where I belong. And so then they came up with the college life coach position. So, along with life coaching, we also teach the transition classes. So, the classes that help students transition from high school to college, we teach those classes. And so, yeah, so this is where I'm happy. This is what I like doing. I'm able to teach. I'm also able to just sit and talk with students that need help. I'm able to connect them to resources and not just like say, hey, here's the email address, but I literally like walk students like over to who they need to talk to. And I even
mm.
I had a student like maybe like 2 months ago. He was like, I need to go to the student clinic. And I was like, okay. And he was like, can you go with me? My mom usually goes with me. So I went with him. I sat in the waiting room, waited for him to get through. Like, yeah. So
Oh,
those types of things really fulfill me. So I really like it. I really like helping students transition from high school to college as well. I like being that extra support that they need, but by the end of the semester, like being able to see them fly, like being able to see how, okay, I supported you, gave you extra support here, and now you can do this on your own. Now you can do that on your own. And so, yeah, I really like it.
yeah. Um, I'm glad that you found your way back into like students, a student facing role, and like one that you also needed when you were their age and in that position. It's really cool. How long have you been in that role now?
So I started that role in the fall of 2023.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Cool,
so
cool.
pretty recent. Mhm.
Yeah. So what would you call this current chapter of your life?
An epiphany is what I would call it. Um,
Ooh.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm understanding things now that I never understood before. So, not only about my students, but also about like my family and have a grandson now. And now I'm understanding like some of the things that I was going through, like being a parent, like and seeing my daughter go through those things. And like impart the wisdom. Like, I think that's so cool because my mom was the one, who imparted, and my dad too, imparted wisdom, like for me to help me, be able to raise my children. And so now I'm able to be that person. So it's like I've had this epiphany that, like, I'm living in my best, the best time in my life. And I'm
Hmm.
really blessed. God has blessed me with a beautiful grandson, and he's like my little world.
I know he gets half birthdays.
Yeah.
Then he'll get a full birthday.
I never heard of that, and my daughter was like, "We need to celebrate half birthday." I was like, "Half birthday? What's that?" She was like, "Oh, that's what they're doing now, Mom, when babies turn 6 months." And I was like, "Okay, whatever he wants, whatever we can do it."
I love that. I love epiphany. That's a very powerful word.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like it's all making sense now, almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Everything together. Hmm.
Okay. Do you? I wanted to ask, since you didn't really mention, but when did you have your daughters?
So I have a daughter and a
Oh, and a
son.
son. Yeah, sorry.
So I had my daughter at 22, and then I had my son at 24,
Okay.
and I was a
Got
single parent.
got you. Okay. So they got some time with your dad, right?
Yeah, especially my daughter. My son was like, I think 2 or 3 when my dad passed, but my daughter, she got the most time. Yeah, and she was like what he had been waiting for all his life. Yeah, he really, they were really, really, really close. Yeah.
Oh.
And I love that. And so, at different times in your life, you'll look back on things that you did, mistakes you made, decisions you
Mm.
made. And so I remember at one point in my life, I was like, oh my gosh, I had these children so young, and I was a single parent. I wish that I would have done it this way. I wish that I would have done it that way. But now I'm like, no, it was perfect. My dad got to have so much joy, like for my daughter. So I did it exactly the way it was supposed to be done.
Mm. That's actually, you answered a question that I wanted to ask, is like if you would have done anything differently to raise your children, since they're both like out of the household now. Um, but you said no, and they got the time that they needed to have or were meant to have with your family. Kind of feels like how your dad felt about your daughter. You're older, right? Your eldest, and then how you feel about your grandson is like the
Yeah.
same. Like just obsessed and like,
Yeah,
this is
I loved
great.
it. And my mom would always say, when you have grandchildren, you'll understand. Because I would be like, Mom, why do you let them get away with this? Why do you give them all that? Why do you do this? She's like, when you have a grandchild, then you will understand. And so when when my grandson was born, I said, oh, Mom, I get it now. I totally get it. You got this little person that you just never knew that you had so much love inside of you. And then when this little person comes, he just brings out like this whole other side. And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I even had so much love inside of me. It's like I feel like I'm gonna burst.
No, that kid's gonna be really lucky to be raised by like so many, like we were talking earlier, like generations of your family around him.
Yes, definitely.
That's awesome.
And I think I'm one of his favorite people already too.
Okay, but he's 6 months old.
No, he's 8 months now. He's 8 months old.
Oh, my
But
bad.
why I think I'm one of his. Every single time we get together, he does this. Every time.
Is he copying you?
No.
I was like, do you do that? Maybe he's attributed that to you, you know?
No, I think that in the beginning I would do it, but now he does it first. So I know people. I'm convinced.
Okay. I love that. I love that for you. I have like 2 more questions. And okay, so one question is, what is your next dream? And, you know, maybe your next desired conditions, and how do you intend to get there?
My next dream, I think like before I die, I want to have like my dream house. And I think in order to get there, I'm kind of on the right track already because I have a lot of equity in the home that we have now, thanks to, well, really thanks to my dad, because my dad, you know, those many years ago found that piece of land that he paid $10,000 for. And, you know, we were able to get like $300,000 for that land. And so,
All right, Dad.
Mom, she decided to put that equity into the home. So we have lots of equity in this home that we have now. So it'll be easy to be able to get that dream home.
That's awesome. I love that. Shouts to your dad. A $10,000, like, that is a big flip.
It is.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And my last question is, what is the final message you'd leave to the listeners?
So the final message is try to live your life to the fullest. But living your life to the fullest doesn't mean just having the things that you want and meeting your own desires, but it means pouring into other people. And what you see, like that end result that you see, will be so fulfilling for you.
Dang, that's really beautiful. That was so selfless and also so on brand. Oh, that is beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Davida.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you were comfortable enough to share so many pieces of your life story here. And and is there anywhere like listeners can find you or reach you? Or if you don't want to be reached, that's also fine.
Sure. So my email address is davida.tarpley@tamuc.edu. So that's D as in dog, A, V as in Victor, I, D as in dog, A, dot T as in Tom, AR, P as in Paul, LEY, at TAMUC.edu.
Cool. I can see you do that often.
I do.
Got that one down.
Yes.
Sweet. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. This was such a pleasure and like a joy to hold space and get to know you even better.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating Your Conditions, a work of understanding the conditions we are given, forged from, and we have yet to face. You can follow us on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube at Creating Your Conditions, which you can also find in the description of this episode. Again, my name is Vin. It's been a pleasure being your host. Keep creating, and I'll catch you in the next episode.